Hallo, meine lieben Damen und Herren. Hier sind wir zum nächsten Stream. Letzter Stream, bevor es in die finale Keynote geht und bevor wir dann noch beim Abschluss die Gewinner der Ausstellerrallye bekannt geben werden. Wir haben noch ein sehr spannendes Thema jetzt vor uns, und zwar den Mont Blanc zu erklimmen, und das mit der Unterstützung von PRINCE2. Sicherlich ein hochinteressantes Thema. Und der Redner, der uns das heute hier schön erklären wird, etwas dazu berichten wird, also ich habe schon das Bild vorab gesehen, dass er da auf dem Weg war, ist Luis Ribeiro. Luis ist Regional Brand Manager EMEA von Axelos. Und ja, vielleicht noch ein ganz kurzer Hinweis, wie immer, der Vortrag ist sicherlich sehr spannend. Wer ihn sich nochmal anschauen möchte, wird aufgezeichnet. Ab Mitte nächster Woche ist er verfügbar. Über diesen QR-Code können Sie uns online folgen und natürlich auch direkt auf die Quellen in YouTube zugreifen nächste Woche. Ja, ich möchte nicht lange mehr um den heißen Brei herumreden. Ich übergebe jetzt direkt an Luis. Vortrag wird in englischer Sprache stattfinden. So I will now switch to English. Of course, not switch up, whatever. Luis,
yeah,
it's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you for the invitation.
Online, of course. And yeah, I will now hand over the moderator presentation rights to you. You can start your presentation, and
Excellent.
From now on, it is your stage. I will switch off my camera and microphone, and it's your audience. Have fun.
Excellent. Well, first of all, thank you, SERVIEW team, for inviting me to this session. Today, I'm going to share my personal story on how PRINCE2 was used by me to climb the highest mountain in Western Europe, the Mont Blanc. But first of all, let's go with some introductions. As Michael said, my name is Luis Ribeiro, and I work as a regional brand manager for EMEA for Axelos. I believe most of you are familiar with Axelos. We are the owners, but I prefer to say the custodians of best practice products such as PRINCE2, MSP, ITIL, and others. And my role at Axelos is basically make sure that our governments and corporates understand the value of best practice. In this case, PRINCE2 is one of our key products. So my role is speaking to many organizations and make sure that they understand the value of PRINCE2, and therefore they want to adopt PRINCE2 in the work practices. Normally, I will have a picture with a suit to present, but because I'm sharing my personal experience in the mountains, I found this picture to be more suitable for the occasion. But two important things to know about me. First of all, I'm not a project manager. So yes, I'm speaking about PRINCE2, I'm speaking about project management, but in fact, I'm not a project manager. But you will see more of that in the presentation. And secondly, as you can guess, I have passion for mountaineering. I like mountaineering. I went to, I said, to the top of Mont Blanc, but have been also doing mountaineering in Nepal. I went to Everest Base Camp Trek as well. I've been doing some mountaineering in Iceland as well. So yeah, I like a lot this. This is one of my hobbies. But now let's speak about the agenda for today. First of all, I want to set up the scene. I want to tell you why exactly I'm doing this presentation and why I came up with this idea. Then I want to tell you what is it to climb Mont Blanc, what is required, what are the routes, and so on. Then the core part of the presentation is how I use the PRINCE2 processes to climb the mountain. Nevertheless, some of the themes and principles were also used. And the final part is some of the takeaways from this experience and what are my next steps. So, setting the scene, why I'm doing this. As part of my role at Axelos, as I said, is to speak to a lot of organizations about best practice. And even though I know PRINCE2 very well because I did the training, I have been reading the book, I also went to train in PRINCE2 Agile, I constantly read about project management and methods. I didn't have the experience of using PRINCE2 in my workplace. And sometimes I was going to conferences or to organizations, and they were speaking about such a complex projects that I was struggling to understand certain things. So then I said to myself, well, why not use PRINCE2 in a personal project? And I was thinking, first something work related, but I said, no, let's do it something personal, something that I enjoy, that will be more easy, like it will be easier to see the applicability of PRINCE2. So I decided to do it in this case, in one of my passions, mountaineering, and in this case, going to the top of Mont Blanc. And let me tell you, it helped me a lot understand how things in PRINCE2 are used in the workplace. And I will share some of that in this presentation. Now, what is it to climb Mont Blanc? First of all, Mont Blanc, very beautiful mountain. It's located in the border between Switzerland and France, and it's an altitude of 4,810 meters, if I'm not mistaken. It's also, apart from being a very beautiful mountain, it's also one of the deadliest mountains in the world. Around 20 to 25 people die climbing the mountain every year. What's the reason why that so many accidents and deaths in the Mont Blanc? Easy, because they don't use PRINCE2. And joke aside, if you look at those accidents or incidents, this is because these people didn't plan properly, or this is because these people didn't mitigate certain risks, or these people didn't organize themselves. And I already mentioned 3 of the PRINCE2 themes as reason why these deaths and accidents happen. So you can see, joke aside, there are certain elements of PRINCE2 that if people don't use, they will have chances of not succeed in the mountain. But in my case, I decided to climb the mountain in 6 days. In reality, you can do it even in 1 day if you're fit and you know how to do it. But in my case, I decided to do it in 6 days. The first part was 3 days of training. So it was not in the actual Mont Blanc mountain. It was in another set of mountains in Switzerland. And for me, that was stage 1. 3 days of training. If I feel fit enough, then I go to the stage 2, which is actually the ascent in the mountain. So you can see here, I'm already using some of the principles managed by stages in my experience. Because as I said, I decided to have 2 stages. I could have done 6 stages. I could have done 3. I could have done the amount of stages that I wanted. But me, as a project manager in my own project, I decided to do in 2 stages, training and ascent. 3 days of just getting acclimatized in the mountains, using the crampons, and the second stage of actually going up the mountain and climb Mont Blanc. So let me show you a bit more of the routes. First one, this is the training stage, which is somewhere in the border between Switzerland and France. And we stayed 3 nights there where we're just walking on glaciers, climbing, even at some point we're climbing vertical walls of ice and then coming back. And then the second part, which of course was the interesting one, was climbing to the top of Mont Blanc. So day 1, we slept in what you see the number 1 in the screen. Day 2, we went to the top of Mont Blanc, and on the way down, we slept in what you see the number 2 in the screen. And then the 3rd day, we just went down. So that's the way that we did it. And now let me show you how I use the PRINCE2 processes to do this activity. You're familiar with PRINCE2. I believe you're very familiar with this diagram. And I'm going to show you how this diagram was used to climb the mountain. So those are the 7 processes, as you know, for PRINCE2. So let's start with the first one, which is starting up a project. And what happened here, how did I come up with the idea? I was checking some social media, and a friend of mine went to the top of Mont Blanc, and I found it very interesting. I said to myself, wow, I have to do this. This is really, really good. So that was the mandate for myself. I mandated myself, go and climb Mont Blanc. At that point, I kind of had an understanding of how long it would take, how much it was going to cost, but very briefly, it was some kind of mini business case, but not much into the detail. I designed a team, so I said I need to do it with a friend. So I had a friend who was going to become my climbing partner, and I was consulting previous experiences that I did just to make sure that I was fit, or I was that trek, or that climb was doable for me. And I did some previous lessons I learned from Everest Base Camp Trek, from the treks that I did in Iceland with the crampons and so on. Once I defined that, yeah, I was ready for that project, Then we went to the second stage, which is directing a project. And here we had a board of directors who will give me the permission to go ahead with the project and to go ahead with certain stages once I completed the end of one stage. In this case, the project board was composed of 4 key stakeholders. First one is work. Why? Because I needed work to approve my holidays in order for me to go. So somehow they were a part of the board. Family, my wife had to give me the okay to go, as you can imagine. Myself, I needed to be convinced that I could do it. And finally, once we were climbing the mountain, the guide became the key stakeholder in the board of directors, because he was going to be the person telling me if I could continue in the project or not. Once the board of directors said, great, go ahead with the project, then I went to the stage of initiating the project, which is basically trying to put a proper business case together, trying to bring more information on what are going to be the cost and benefits. In my case, I really knew the cost, flight tickets, paying the guides, and so on. And the benefit was my own satisfaction, my own, how can I say, yes, I said satisfaction, or the sensation that, yeah, the feeling that I made it to the top of Mont Blanc. I also defined a quality strategy. Basically, I was going to invest money on having a good guide and good equipment. I wanted to make sure that I had most of the chances to get to the top of Mont Blanc. I also defined a risk strategy. In this case, was do a lot of research to know what things I need to take into account in the mountain, because there are some, I would say, dangerous areas in the mountain. But I was also going to do some training before going to the mountain, especially being in a very fit condition, not to suffer with the altitude. Then the project plan, as I said, 2 stages, and then I went to plan the first stage, which was the training stage. Then after this, PRINCE2 tells us, controlling a stage. How are you controlling a stage? Is basically how you're ensuring that the progress is being measured. I have to say, I didn't have a fancy equipment to measure the progress that I was making every day, but it was more of my own indication of how much I have been walking, of what distance I walked with the speed, and how tired I was feeling. If I was feeling very tired, maybe I needed to decrease the pace. Maybe I didn't need enough. I didn't need some of the weight in my backpack, and therefore I could be more light. So yeah, it was trying to get that that balance between what's the right pace to do it with my climbing partner. What's the weight that I'm going to put in my backpack? I'm going to put a lot of food, and then I can eat on the mountains, but then it's going to be heavy for me. Or I might go light, where I can have more energy, but maybe I'm not going to have enough food. So I was trying to find that balance. But as I said, I was ensuring that I could walk on a steady pace and make it to the point where we wanted to be on that day. And if we had any issues, I was registering those issues. I have to say I didn't have an issue register or risk register. I was registering those issues in my head. Then PRINCE2 tells us, PRINCE2 tells us the next step is managing product delivery. And what in this case is managing product delivery is basically delivery work packages. And for me, a work package in the mountains is you walk from point A to B. You define what A and B are. It could be 10 meters, it could be 100 meters, it could be 1 kilometer. You define each of the work packages. And in our case was a walk of around 1.5 hours, and then resting, drinking something, eating something, and then going to the next point. And in order for me to deliver those work packages, I needed to ensure that first of all, the guide was going to provide the rope and the proper guidance that I needed. And secondly, agree on a steady pace of climb with my partner, because we both were with the rope. We needed to make sure that I was not going too fast or I wasn't going too slow. We needed to be in a synchronized pace. And only like that we could walk from A to B. And you see that communication of work packages will take me to the top of the mountain, because I'm walking always A to B, A to B, A to B, and so on. Then PRINCE2 tell us, yeah, you need to manage a stage boundary. And as I said earlier, I defined my project in 2 stages. And that importantly, at the end of each stage, I could make, well, the board of directors will make a decision if we can go ahead or not to the next stage. In this case, personally, on the second day of training, I was feeling really weak and I thought I was not going to be able to make it to the Mont Blanc. In fact, the guy told me, likely you're not going to have the energy to do it, so I might not give you the okay to do it. But on the third day of training, the last day, I was feeling totally fine and I did everything very well. That the guy told me, okay, you're ready to go. As long as you're happy, I'm happy for you to go. So as you see, the board of directors gave the okay for me to continue for the next stage. And I'm glad that they did, because look at what I would have missed if I didn't do that beautiful climb. This is just some of the scenery from Mont Blanc. I have to say, on the day when I did it, it wasn't that sunny. In fact, it was very cloudy and very white. But at least you will have a view of what that is to climb the mountain. That's the top of the mountain. And just to clarify, when you make it to the top of the mountain, that's not when the project ends. That's half of the project, because then you have to go down. And in many cases in mountaineering, most of the accidents and most of the incidents that happen in mountaineering, they happen on the way down. People spend all the energy to go up, but they don't have energy to go down. And let me tell you, it's a big effort to go down as well. And you don't have the motivation of going to the top. You are extremely tired, and yeah, physically you need to have enough energy to go down. So it takes us to the last step in the processes, which is closing a project. As I said, for us, closing a project was not to be on the top, was to be down in the mountain. In fact, being in Chamonix, the city where we were sleeping, and at that point we said, okay, we can close the project because we made it to the top, and we are safely back in town. And in this stage, basically, we have the acceptance of products. In my case, there were two products. One was the experience of my own satisfaction. I made it to the mountain. But the other one was, of course, photos. I wanted to show off on social media to say, oh, look, I went to the top of the mountain. And these three pictures that I'm showing now on the screen were pictures, not my pictures, were pictures that I saw before I went to the mountain. Those were the pictures that I said, wow, I want to have these type of pictures in social media because it's going to be viral. All my friends are going to be crazy. This is going to be extremely beautiful if I'm on top of the mountain with these type of pictures. The reality, as I said, the day wasn't that sunny. So this is the picture that I got. Some people believe that it's not Mont Blanc, it's just a ski resort, and I just put some kind of ropes to pretend that I was in Mont Blanc. But I reassure you, that's on the top of the Mont Blanc. Now, important part, what are the takeaways after doing this and after using PRINCE2 to climb the mountain? Well, first of all, I have to say that if you're not a project manager, still PRINCE2 is useful. You can understand, and especially you can use PRINCE2 if you're not a project manager. In a sense, we are a project manager you can be a project manager for a very tiny project of, I don't know, booking a trip or doing something very small. So in a sense, in every single activity that we do, even if you're in marketing, if you're in finance, or in other departments, you always have components of project management. And PRINCE2 will be useful for those activities, definitely. It's useful to climb a mountain. Why not to be useful to organize, I don't know, certain activities in marketing, or if you are working in HR, to organize other things. Secondly, the principles and themes were also useful in the climb. I didn't want to extend myself too much in this presentation, so I focused on the processes. But as I said, some of the principles and some of the themes were very useful in the climb as well. And finally, this is more of a conclusion, definitely PRINCE2 is tailorable, is suitable for any type of project. From complex projects of building bridges or building airports, to projects like climbing a mountain, organizing a wedding, or any other type of project that you can think of. Now, what are the next steps for me? I want to climb a mountain called Island Peak. That's the red pin that you see in the screen. It looks very tiny in the screen, but that's because it's next to Everest and other very high mountains, such as Lhotse and other 8,000 meters mountains. So that's why it looks tiny. But it's 6,300 meters a mountain, so it's a very high mountain. And it's a mountain that is very technical. These are pictures taken from the mountain. So you see you have the ladders to cross the crevasses, and it's quite dangerous. You have vertical walls to climb, and wherever you walk, you have crevasses everywhere. So I know what it takes. I know the cost. I know the duration. So I already started up the project. But then I went to the board of directors, and when my wife saw those pictures, she said, "No way, you're not going to go to that mountain." So right now the project is on hold until I can convince my wife to let me go through this trip. But hopefully I can do it in a point of time, and then I can share with you the experience that I had climbing this mountain. So this is all from my end. I want to say, yeah, thank you for your time, and I hope you found it very useful. If you are new to PRINCE2, this is a good example of how PRINCE2 can be easily tailored or used in a project. But if you're very familiar with PRINCE2 and you're an experienced project manager, sometimes it's good to put things in the basics and show that this type of product works in very basic scenarios.
Thank you, Luis.
Thank you.
So let me just ask the audience if there are any questions. So far, we have no questions. I think it's interesting what you said, that finally the conclusion is when you use PRINCE2, many things even in your real life can become better. Climbing Mont Blanc with PRINCE2, great idea. It all makes sense. Yesterday, I did a presentation about MOR risk management, and I used daily life examples as well for risk management. So the whole daily life is risk management. So even many initiatives you do throughout your whole day can be supported by the idea of PRINCE2 and project management. So, looks like there's a question. Did you do the full documentation of PRINCE2?
Okay.
Do you understand the question?
I believe it. I mean, of course, PRINCE2 requires some documentation, such as, let's say, PRINCE2 might say you need a risk register, and in my case, I didn't have a proper document or Excel file or a laptop documenting risk. I was having those in my head, and I didn't take definitely not the PRINCE2 book with me. It would have been a lot of weight, and I might not be able to make it to the mountain. But yeah, many things were not documented because it was, I would say, it's also an example of how PRINCE2 was used, but by no means we were following specific guidance and we're documenting all of those things.
Thank you. So finally, I can see there's a smiley at the end of the question, and now I know what he meant with the full documentation of PRINCE2. So many people always believe PRINCE2 is very strong focused on documentation. Okay. Sometimes it seems it is very strong focus on documentation, but at the end, you do documentation for what is necessary. That's the final conclusion.
Exactly. And as I said, I didn't have the chance to document things because I didn't have a laptop or even I was not going to carry paper with me and write things. And sometimes registering things in my head was good enough. So yeah, PRINCE2 might say different things for you to do, but that doesn't mean you have to do all of them. You might decide not to do 1, 2, or 3. So it's important to say that this is where PRINCE2 is you adopted and adapted depending on your organization. You don't have to do every single step that what it says. Take whatever is relevant and important for you.
So finally, it's the philosophy that stands behind PRINCE2 helps you even in your real life. And this philosophy, that's best practice. Many people have done this. And so finally, as a conclusion, you can say nothing is wrong with that because many people have proven this. So great. So we have no more questions. That means we are at the end, Luis. Thank you very much. I wish you all the best when you climb your next mountains.
Okay.
Come back safe.
If I use PRINCE2, for sure I will.
Maybe for the next time would be a good idea for risk management presentation. Because I think risk management is even part of the mountains, or program management when you intend to climb all large mountains in the world. some kind of a program.
I have to say that recently I put together a presentation as well related to mountains, and it's how a service provider is taking people to the mountains. So I'm using it's more in the IT space, in the service management space. So how the company who took me to Everest Base Camp was using some of the ITIL principles, ITIL elements to take people to mountains. So it's basically, in this case, the guide. For me, this is a project because I'm doing this as a one-off. It has a start and end date, but the guide is providing a service because he will have more people like me on what measurements, what elements that guide is using to ensure that that service is going to be delivered on time with no incidents and so on. So yeah, maybe for next occasion, we can speak about that one as well.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Luis. Thank you for people who attended.
Let me just take over the moderation again, and let me just do a conclusion with one. There's the right slide. Again, the presentation was recorded, and for those that want to watch the presentation, they will be available, I think, around middle of next week. Okay, thank you, Luis, again. So, wir sind damit am Ende der einzelnen Streams. Wir haben noch 1,5 Programmpunkte, um es so grundsätzlich zu sagen. Wir haben um 12:15 Uhr noch die Keynote zur Projektleitung aus dem Homeoffice heraus. Insofern ganz interessant. Wir haben gerade gesehen, wie man viele Dinge auch im tagtäglichen Leben, auch wenn sicherlich das Besteigen des Mont Blancs nicht tagtäglich sein mag, aber dass man natürlich auch viele Themen, die nicht klassisch aus dem Projektmanagement kommen, mit Projektmanagement-Methodik unterstützen kann. Und das spielt sicherlich auch, das, was ums Haus herum dann auch passiert, sicherlich auch eine Rolle, wo man sich Gedanken machen könnte, ob da Methodik aus dem Projektmanagement bei helfen kann, gerade nämlich, wenn man viel im Homeoffice sitzt. Ja, daher sicherlich noch eine spannende Keynote um 12:15 Uhr von Jürgen Haas von Bearing Point. Und vergessen Sie nicht, um 12:55 Uhr gibt es noch eine kurze Verabschiedung, Ausblick, was Sie so in Zukunft erwarten können und natürlich auch noch die Auslosung der Gewinner der Aussteller-Rallye. Genau. Daher sage ich an dieser Stelle von meiner Seite, schön, dass Sie alle dabei waren und auf ein Wiedersehen. Tschüss.